Hello and welcome back, you marvelous Godot people. In this video, we're going to look at another option for our storybook. We're going to look at how to do a JSON file. Now, this is kind of repeating the same effect a different way, and I'm really just showing it as a way of showing that there's multiple ways you could solve this problem, and as an introduction to how to open files within Godot. So before we go any further, let's define JSON. I'm going to link you to this page. This is from the JSON documentation. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's a way of bringing in a bunch of data to various programs and various operating systems in a very clear way. But if we just want the basics, they work like this. JavaScript Object Notation is a list of things we can have, and there are two types of lists, right? There's an array, which has value 1 and value 2, and keeps going. Value can be a string, it can be an integer, a boolean, whatever else we want, right? Our standard variable types. It's defined by using square brackets, and it has a comma between each one, and we can keep putting as many as we like in there. Or we can have objects, which are defined by having a key, which is always a string, a colon, and then a value, which can be any type. And so go key, colon, value, comma, key 2, comma, value, and so on, and so on, and so on. And what's really cool about this is this looks very familiar, right? This is how GDScript handles arrays and dictionaries, with one key difference, and I'm using the word key here as an unintentional pun. Our keys have to be strings for this to work in JSON. We need to create a JSON file, and then we need to figure out how to open the file. And as well as opening it, we need to get Godot to read it, parse it, that means understand it, and then close the file. Technically, we don't have to close the file. We can keep it open in memory, but that's bad practice. So let's get into Godot. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on the resource folder, and I'm going to open it in File Manager by clicking Open in File Manager. Now, for this next bit, we're going to need some sort of editor. You can do this in a standard notepad. It will work just fine in text. But realistically, we need a third-party source. I'm going to be using Atom. It's a free and open source IDE, but you could use Visual Studio Code. You could use whatever you like to use to make these files. So I'll provide a link to Atom, but find the one that you like. And if I open Atom, I can save this. So let's save as, and I just need to get to that folder. So I'm going to reopen this folder, copy the link, because I can't be bothered to find it, and go here. And I'm going to call this stories.json. In fact, I'm going to call it StoryBook, just to be really clear. StoryBook.json. Awesome. Now I'm going to go back into Godot. I'm going to open my script, and you remember this whole thing that I commented out so I could show it? For now, I'm going to uncomment it and cut it, so it's just not in there anymore. Back into Atom, and I'm going to paste it in. What I don't want is this variable template, so let's get rid of you. And what we have here is an array of dictionaries. Key things, I need to make sure that every story has a comma between them. Okay, so we have a dictionary with prompts and story. All keys must be strings. Okay, so if we don't have it in strings, this will not work. So we have to put this in strings. By the way, you'll notice some of my stories have \n in them. That's how I can put a line break in my string without breaking it. So right now we have all these stories good to go. So I'm just going to save this. So here's my storybook JSON saved. I can close that and get back into Godot. You'll notice it doesn't show up in the file manager. Does that mean it's not there? Well, let's go check. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to open in File Manager. And I can see storybook.json. So why can I see it here but not in File Manager? And the reason is Godot can't read JSON files directly. I can't edit them, which means they won't show up here, which is one of the potential downsides of using a JSON. It has a lot of advantages, but this is not one of them. Okay, so let us scroll down a bit, and I'm going to make a brand new function. I need to find a way of getting a file from JSON. So that's going to be a function get from JSON. Okay, before I figure out what that is, let's make sure we're getting this right. So I need to comment out all of this. Okay, instead, let's set a new variable for stories. And this is going to be get from JSON. Well, we might want to use multiple JSON files, right? So to do that, I'm going to give it a file name, and that's going to be my storybook.json. I'm pretty sure that's written correctly, but what I could also do is go back into this folder here, go to rename this and just copy this whole name. So I'm going to copy that. I would normally use keyboard shortcuts, but whatever. And paste it there. And here I need to pass an argument in. So let's call this file name. Great. So we're going to get the stories from get.from.json. And you know what? That can be before randomize. So I'm going to press Alt and up arrow to move it up there. Okay. So what do I need now? I need to set my current story. So let's do current story equals, and this is going to be part of the stories array. So I'm going to need to put it in an array, and I'm going to get my random integer. So pick a random object in here, and what's your maximum size? It's going to be stories dot size, right? Exactly as we did it before. Okay, so clearly what we need now is get from JSON. So the first thing I need to do is I need to use this file command. And if I left click and press Control, you can see we've got a whole bunch of commands we can use. But essentially what this does is handles file reading and writing operations. Great. So what do I need to do? Let's create a new variable. Variable file with a small f, and that equals file.new. This new function tells it we've now got a brand new file, capital F, a file object. So I could call this JSON file if I wanted to, just to make it very clear what's happening. But you will often see this in programming, right? Capitalization is key. Small f is not the same as a big F. Okay, so what's that going to do? Well, we need to open this file, right? So let's do file.open. And that's going to take some arguments. The first is, what is our file name? So it's going to be file name. And what do we need to do with it? File.read. By the way, if you want to know why I'm magically typing stuff here, I'm going to go to File and scroll down. This is almost identical to this load function. Okay, so we're opening the file, telling what file to do it, then read it. But we're not doing exactly the same thing because I don't want to save game. I want to open a JSON and get the value from within the JSON. Okay, so we need the text from this file. So variable text equals file dot, and there's a function I'm going to use here, get as text, right? So it's telling it this is a text file. Don't try and read it like a picture or a sound or anything else. Just read it as text. Okay, so I've read the file. I've told it this is text, but now I need to understand it. I need to parse it. So let's call data, because that's what I'm getting, right? I'm getting the data out of this, and that's going to be parse JSON. What am I parsing? The text. Great. Now I need to close the file. So file.close. It will work fine without it, but why have it in memory when I don't need it? And now finally I need to return. And what am I returning? I'm returning the data, right? This bit here. Okay, this can seem a little magical. So let's just go over what we've just done. We've looked up the file and taken a look at some of the key concepts we can do. Specifically, we want to open a file, close a file. We need to parse it as JSON. So I'm just using a lot of this with a few extra special sources coming in. And to follow through the logic of what's happening, we've declared a variable called file, which we've told it is a file object that we're making new. What is it? We're going to open the file name, whatever we're passing in, which in this case is storybook.json. And we're reading it. We're not writing to it, we're opening it as read-only. Okay, now there's something called text, which is the contents of the file as text. So open it up, don't try and read it as a picture or a sound effect, it's just text. But we don't just want the text, we want the meaning from the text, right? We need it to understand what this is, we need to parse it. So there's a variable called data, which is what's in the text, parsed as JSON. Finally, we're closing the file, we don't need it, and we're returning the data to here. So stories is that, right? It's the data passed as JSON. The current story is all of the stories, and then we're just going to pick within the array a random size. Before we go any further, I've actually done this bit wrong here. This should be READ, because this is, there we go. That's what I'm looking for, this autocomplete. How do I know? I go to File and do a search for read. Let's find the next one. Here we go. These are flags, right? So read, all in capitals, is one. Remember what I was saying that file with small f is not the same as file with big F? Well, this is not the same as this. That's what I want. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm going to press play. Welcome to Looney Lips. We're going to tell a story. Have a wonderful time. May I have a name? Turtle. May I have a thing? Cuddly toy. May I have a feeling? Hungry. I'm a little bit hungry. Another feeling. Let's have another feeling. Let's have floaty. Some things. Mice. Once upon a time, a turtle ate a cuddly toy and felt very hungry. It was a floaty day for all good mice. I'm going to press again. May I have a noun? It's a different thing. Pig. May I have a name? Mr. Squiggle. An adjective. Grey. Another name. Baron von Gigglefoot. Once upon a time, a pig called Mr. Squiggle. There was a pig called Mr. Squiggle who searched far and wide for the mythical grey noun of Baron von Gigglefoot. That noun is wrong, but that's fine. Welcome, and look, it's going to give us differently each time. Okay, quite a lot to take in here. So before we go any further, let's talk about why would you bother with JSON? In general, JSON is a really good format, right? It's operating system agnostic, so it'll work really easy no matter what device I'm using. If I can handle modern programming languages, it'll work on Windows, it'll work on Linux, it'll work on Mac, etc., etc., etc. We could also add an extra layer to those arrays. We could have one in English, one in American English, one in French, one in Canadian French, one in Japanese, Klingon, whatever else we want. And if we put this file in our user file as opposed to in our resource file, which is something we can look at later in the course, we can make this moddable. We can let the player create their own stories. But there are some downsides. One, we have to edit the file outside of JSON. Godot can't edit JSON files directly, which adds an extra layer of complexity for exactly the same result. So really, we're having to step outside Godot to get the same result in here. So which solution was better for you? Personally, I'm more inclined to keep things within the engine unless there's a good reason to put them outside. But if you want that extra modding and all the rest of it, maybe JSON is right. In this video, we've looked at the awesome power of JSON. It's very flexible and it's very similar to the way we do arrays and dictionaries in GDScript. We've looked at how to read files in Godot. And we've finished Looney Lips. That's it. We're done. We're almost ready to move on to the next section. How did it work out? How's your game looking? Don't forget to put anything cool you've found or made on the forums, on Discord, on the Facebook group. I'd love to see what you guys are making. Meanwhile, great stuff, and I will see you in the next video.